Welcome to this Learn at Work webinar presented by the journal Work, a journal of prevention, assessment, and rehabilitation. I'm Karen Jacobs, the founding editor of Work, and I'll be the moderator for today's really interesting webinar. So Kermit, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm so delighted that Dr. Kermit Davis is going to be presenting on an article published in Work. Welcome, Kermit.
Yes, thank you. I greatly appreciate allowing me to present this work a little bit beyond the traditional publication. The title of the article or the study really is the assessment of ergonomic issues in the home offices of university employees sent home due to COVID-19 pandemic. And this was a pretty broad study, and actually we'll be publishing additional articles and Work in a special issue, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes later in the talk. But there is a large contributing group of scientists that assisted me, particularly Susan Kotowski, who's a major contributor in this work. Thomas Gerding led a team of students on part of the studies that included Megan Syck, Denise, Jennifer Naylor, and then also was mentored by Gordon Gillespie, Randy Freeman, and Tom Huston. Working from home is really, it wasn't a thing that just happened in COVID. But there were millions of people sent home due to COVID-19 in the spring of 2020. Everything shut down. We sent everybody home, and most of the individuals that could work at home were working at home. Now there's a lot of jobs that don't have the ability to work at home, and certainly this won't cover those type of jobs. But 55% of these virtual workforce will continue to work at home in the next 2 years. My expectation, many up to 40 to 50% will actually will become permanent virtual office workers. There are many occupations out there that have a potential to have many of their employees, up to 70%, that could work virtually. And those are in financial activities, informational processing, professional activities, and business services. So working from home is likely to stay here from now on in major sectors of our industry and our workforce. What do we know about virtual offices? Well, it offers better work flexibility. It reduces the commuting. So you don't have to commute every day. So you get sometimes, for some people, hour to hour and a half, maybe sometimes 2 hours both directions. Oftentimes this improves job satisfaction. Work-family balance is one of the big key ones that you're able to address, particularly in a COVID-19 situation, where many of the students or kids were sent home also. So there was that work-family balance that really had an impact during the virtual office environment during the pandemic. It's been shown to improve productivity. There's a lot better motivation oftentimes, and certainly better job retention. But one of the bad parts about it is there's limited resources for office equipment. And this is one of the big things that we'll show in the study. There is the potential, I think, for web conference burnout. This is not something we'll touch here, but I do believe this is something pretty impactful that we'll see moving forward. As one of the things with web conferences, you tend to do multitasking. You're not there totally with a complete attention to what the conversation is going on. Oftentimes you're checking email, you're doing other things. So you're dual tasking a lot more, which I think leads to conference burnout. And also you see a lot of conferences web conferences back to back to back, and then you realize, hey, I've just been in an office chair for 4 hours and haven't been able to get up and take a break. Scheduling is a real key for web conferencing. So what this study is about is that an online survey designed to assess the current workstations for faculty and staff in the spring of 2020. So it was pretty immediate after everyone was sent home, about a month after relative speaking. We also did a sub-sample of pictures of workstations, which was published in Ergonomics and Design, where we looked at 2 pictures from workers that sent them in, and we did an ergonomic assessment, which I think parallels pretty well with the results of this the online survey. So I've included that in this webinar, and we'll be talking about that survey. Well, we had some demographics questions about what position, staff, faculty, administration, what the age group was, and what the gender was, just to get some basic information about who was completing the surveys. We also looked at how often certain things were used in their home office, from computers to types of seating, chairs, non-traditional chairs. Were the chair armrests on the chairs adjustable? Was their chair, did the chairs have lumbar support? We also looked at the type of screens. Did you have just a computer monitor of the laptop? Did you have external monitor? Did you have multiple monitors? And then finally, what type of workstations? Were they non-traditional? Was it a traditional office workspace? Was it adjustable? And many types of that. And we'll get into them more. We also looked at how they were sitting, if their body was in contact with the chair. Was the upper body twisted or bent sideways? Was it flexed forward or extended? And was the neck in different postures? So really looking at how people were interacting, their perspectives on how they were interacting with their workstation. We also looked at some general items. How long would they work without taking a break? Did they use the glasses when they were working? What type? Bifocals? Did they take any walks during the day of more than 5 minutes? Were they at a higher stress level? Would they feel more tired? Or any type of physical discomfort? And we really looked into the discomfort in a more detailed way, looking at multiple body regions to see what the current discomfort was. We did have, in the original study, 843 participants. Majority were faculty, and then there was 19 people that obviously didn't respond, whether they were faculty or staff. If you look at the study, what happens, or what we found was that a large percentage of people were sent home with a laptop. Very few used other things like a desktop or a tablet or another device, such as a handheld or another type of device of entry. So people were just, 70% of the individuals used a laptop. And one of the things that we'll talk about later is some of the pros and cons of a laptop. But typically in a work environment that is longer than a few hours, a laptop is not very conducive ergonomically. We also saw a lot of chairs that were not office chairs. Obviously, there was a great deal of office chairs with arms, as you see with the always and often, but people were also then gravitating to other chairs where you see a high percentage of people at some time through their activities at home, they were using a dining chair. Dining room chairs are good for eating for a few hours, a little bit of time, but once you start working on it a long period of time, you end up with lack of support. Usually there are usually no arms. Oftentimes they have no lumbar back support, and they're not very conducive for long-term office work. Similarly with folding chairs. And you also see that there's a lot of times that people were using their bed and couch, which is really not conducive ergonomically for long-term office work. We also saw that as with laptops, majority of the individuals use a built-in monitor of the laptop. If you look at the often and always, some people did use an external monitor with the laptop. That certainly was used oftentimes, which is certainly a good thing. Again, I'll talk a little bit about laptop monitors and a little bit with the actual pictures, gives you a better visual. And then there was a few people that actually used 2 external monitors when they were using it, and I'll also talk about some key aspects about that. With input devices, laptop keyboard and traditional mouse were used the most. Again, we sent them home with a laptop, not many other accessories, except for some people used a traditional mouse. A lot of people still used just the laptop keyboard and laptop mouse. So that was really a key issue that we saw across the board. With the desks, one of the things that you see is there's a traditional desk. So there's about 20 to about 50% either always or often we're using a traditional desk. But a lot of people also used, about 40% of people use a makeshift desk, which oftentimes is a dining room table, a kitchen counter, and those type of setups that are not necessarily good. And we'll again talk about a little bit more detail when we looked at the pictures that we had that accompanied the study. If you look at the bad body postures, oftentimes the neck came into play, tilted forward. You would expect that with a laptop use, particularly if it's used in your lap. But you also had some other ones that oftentimes tilted sideways or back bent forward was an issue. Now this is where I think some of the more disappointing or alarming type of results. If you look at the discomfort, you have the moderate, the red and black ones, bars here, you have pretty significant amounts of pain on average that was occurring. So 40% of people, upper back and neck area, had moderate pain, and close to 50% had moderate to severe pain in the upper back and the shoulders and neck area. You also get a higher percentage in the middle to lower back also, which also is of concern. So there's a pretty significant, about 50% of people were having significant, severe to moderate pain and discomfort that completed the survey. To me, that's pretty alarming. I would expect a lot more in the mild to none pain levels, but we were significantly seeing pain that were for the workers at about a month out into the pandemic. We also saw that relative to pre-pandemic, so obviously this is a perception of the stress and tiredness. There's a good percentage, 40%, that didn't think they were any more stressed or tired at home. But there was a significant number of people that thought they were both more stressed and more tired at working from home during the pandemic. And again, this was about a month out in that light. So the take-home message of the survey, first was, laptops were widely used. When we sent faculty and staff home at the university level, we saw everybody sent home laptops, and that was about it, which meant things like the kitchen table and the counters became their favorite workspace, their makeshift workplace. There were a few people that ended up having actual office dedicated workstations. And, one of the bigger things also is that the discomfort appeared to be correlated with poor choices of workplace devices. So this is, some of the patterns of what you're seeing is very, we were having some issues. And we get some of this through some of the summary of the regression analysis that we did. Certainly, one of the big things that you have different that you have in the home oftentimes that you don't have in the workplace is glare, and that came out throughout all our regression models, that it was detrimental for pain in these areas. And if you look at the glare, and what typically happens is at home you don't have the trimmings and the shades particularly, and you get a lot of natural lighting that a lot of the buildings that are on campus or even in office buildings take away the sunlight that's coming through. They're designed in their work areas to be appropriately arranged so you don't have the glare that you would have typically in a home. And that resulted in a lot of the results that came out there. You also see that there's many things that benefited. Other things that, I guess, the other things that were detrimental was, working from a couch. It was detrimental for the neck. Again, that likely was because of using a laptop. Excuse me, sorry. There was some beneficial stuff where you have back with the contact with the chair. So making sure you're in proper ergonomic position with the chair would reduce it. Using external monitor. Again, back with the contact with the chair was in multiple of these benefits that were out here that were related to the various discomforts. And adjustable arms was also beneficial. So these are things that, again, impacted the discomfort. If you look at the lower back and the mid back and lower extremities, you start seeing things with back in contact with chair became a protective. A laptop with the laptop keyboard was protective of middle back, which is counterintuitive in my sense on that one. But taking time without a break, shorter times certainly was more beneficial when taking breaks in that. So what you're seeing is some of the proper ergonomics of using adjustable chair, armchairs or armrests with the back against with the contact of the chair, external keyboards, and sorry. We're all able to, have an impact positively. And then things like dining chair, couch, sitting on a couch, glare, were all negatively impacting the discomfort. All right, so the next one is the actual ergonomic assessment. And part of this is we allowed the individuals to submit pictures. And it was a separate link where we provided my email, and they could send in 2 pictures with themselves in the actual workstation, one from directly behind them and one from the side orthogonally. And then our research team, the students and myself and Dr. Kotowski went through and identified ergonomic concerns and provided recommendations for them to address these ergonomic concerns. One of the things is with dual monitors, we did see a lot of dual monitors. Either they hooked up the monitor, an external monitor to the laptop, or they actually had dual monitors, like in this what this person shows and to the right. And one of the big things with the dual monitors is if you're going to use the laptop as one of your monitors, is not to have the external monitor that you should be using off to the side, because as you can see, that tends to make them twist one direction or the other. And particularly with dual monitors, you want to make sure that split is not directly in front of you, but man, sorry about this. I can't get rid of this cough. Or this tickle, actually. When you have dual monitors, you want to have the monitor that you're using most often, which should be the external monitor with the laptop, would be directly in front of you and at the appropriate height. So in all these cases, either this person should have this one to the right more centered with the one that he would use secondary to the left, or the person that's using the external monitor brought in front of them where they're typing. And this is where the external keyboard really comes into play also, that can help position you so you're not having the monitor that you use off to the one side or not, that's causing the twisting of the neck and the back. So dual monitors were of concern. Hard edges were a major concern because a lot of them were using even the table or the office workstations often had this hard front edge that was being leaned on during typing. And so that was it. A lot of chairs didn't have proper arms, so seating concerns. Where they didn't have adjustable arms, they positioned the armrests so that they could actually use them. If you're not using armrests when you're typing, you'll tend to get upper back discomfort because your back and your neck muscles have to support your arms, especially in long durations. And that's what's really a problem with working with laptops on your lap. You're having to hold your arms up as well as flexing forward your neck. Again, with many of these situations in the dining room table type situation, hard backs, not supported oftentimes, which we'll talk about some of the interventions for this, and no arms, particularly with a dining room table chair. So this is both, the hard edges on the front edge is of dining room tables or on office tables or surfaces are alarming. And then use of proper chairs with support is another alarming concern. Oftentimes, the monitors are too low, and that's one of the big things with the laptop, which means your neck is going to be flexed forward. Oftentimes, you'll slant your back away from the support of the chair. And you might think, well, I can also do this in a standing situation. Again, with the standing situation, with a sit-stand table or apparatus, with a laptop, you're still going to end up having the monitors too low, and your arms are going to not be supported. So long-term usage of sit-stand tables can also have adverse if they're not properly adjusted. And you can't adjust it the same way you're going to adjust it for a sitting position because those two interact totally different with your body, particularly your upper body. So you have to be aware of when you adjust a sit-stand table to a standing position that you need to adjust your monitor most likely in some of your keyboard and mouse positions potentially too. But working at a table, dining room table without this, with the laptop, put your back oftentimes and your neck in positions that you're constantly looking down that are going to cause problems. Non-traditional workstations, we saw several of them send in positions of using a laptop on a couch, as well as a bed. This over to the right, this one's an interesting one where they had a workstation that was part of they were in the music, obviously the music department, where they were using a keyboard to develop music, and as well as an input keyboard. And so, there's a lot of non-traditional workstations that you have at home that you have to deal with, and particularly the couch and the bed were the ones that we were seeing the most adverse ergonomic postures, just because that laptop ends up being placed on your lap, and you can see by the angles, and oftentimes you don't have great support of your lower back and also. So these are concerns that need to be addressed also, that you got to minimize the amount of time that you spend on the couch or on the bed. We also saw a lot of monitors that were too low, even the ones that were external monitors that were too low. That again, you want to have the top of the monitor at eye height, so you're just slightly bent forward. This includes if you're using a laptop. Again, that's going to automatically cause you to have it too low. This is why you need to have an external keyboard and get that monitor raised upright. It doesn't have to be really expensive. To do that, you can use a box or a piece of wood. There's many things that you can do to raise it up. There are certainly many alternative workstations, and again, as I said, you need to make sure that when you do a sit-stand workstation that you have to adjust. Having the keyboard maybe on a stack of books that puts the keyboard in a neutral position, because when you raise that workstation up, it's not necessarily going to be the same when you're standing as you're sitting. And then I also say that a lot of people are using treadmill. You just have to be careful on the speed of the treadmill, that it remains walking, because you're now doing a dual task. And you want to make sure, again, making sure that the workstation is adjusted properly with the monitor and the keyboard at the right heights. So one of the things that we saw with the ergonomic assessments is that a lot of the information that we gathered in the surveys was supported by the pictures. And the pictures there were very few workstations that we could come and say, all right, you really don't have anything at all to do. But almost universally, the monitors were typically too low. Laptops were used a lot without external keyboards and mouses or mice. And then there was a lot of times with hard front edges that were consistently seen with poor choice of chairs. So how can we help? What are the interventions out there? Well, they don't have to be expensive. You don't have to go back out and spend several $100s on an expensive office chair. If you have the means, go ahead and do that. But there are ways to increase and improve by using towels or pillows, as you can see that we recommended, to put a rolled up towel in the back of the chair to provide lumbar support on a chair that doesn't have any support. Again, a pillow that can take up some of the space in the lumbar region. Putting a towel in the front edge of the surface, or the arms of a chair that might be not have much padding, but they're very hard, that can produce and maybe not adjustable either. That you can wrap it around these particular armrest raised up to accommodate for a non-adjustable or hard armrest, that you can bring it up to the right height, so you can get the forearms supported as well as above the front edge of that hard surface. So that those are key issues, and making sure that the back is supported when you're using the workstation. The monitors is another key area. When you're using dual and you're using external keyboard or external to the laptop, you want to make sure that that laptop is not the primary one, but you're using the external one that it's as at the eye height is at the top of it, so you're slightly. So we had this person adjust it down. Actually, it was below, and we had to readjust her to bring it down just a little bit. Again, with the dual, monitors. Make sure that the primary one you use is directly in front of you, and move the one that your secondary one to the left or to the right so that you're not constantly twisting your neck to use that. And if you just have a laptop, get a keyboard and a mouse external and put that up in boxes or books that gets it up to the right height. And that's what you see over on the right side of this. So again, what's wrong with the laptops? Well, one is the built-in monitor. It causes you to bend your neck forward. And that's just due to the screen is too low when you're working on the keyboard, especially when it's in your lap. A smaller keyboard will have awkward arm postures. You have to kind of scrunch your hands closer in because the keyboards are smaller than an external keyboard. And the built-in mouse oftentimes will require you to have rapid small hand movements that could all cause problems. So by just putting an external monitor or putting the laptop on box or books so that the screen is level with your eye height on the top of the screen, that's one of the key components. And then using an external keyboard and mouse. So an external keyboard and mouse, you can probably pick those up for about $25 total. So a very relatively inexpensive fix is to put your laptop on books or boxes sitting around, and then put an external keyboard and mouse, and that's going to fix a lot of your issues and concerns when you're at home. Other interventions, I can't stress enough, no matter what office area that you're in, every 30 minutes, stand up, move around for 2 minutes. Long durations at the workstation, either sitting or standing, will cause you discomfort. And it's key to take breaks about every 30 minutes. Again, with 2 monitors, if you have it, make sure the primary one's directly in front of you. If you have a sharp edge on the surface that you can't get rid of, put a soft towel on the front edge of it. It creates sort of a mouse or a keypad that's in front of your keyboard or mouse. You can also, as this picture showed, you can get insulation for a pipe and slice it down the length, and that hooks right onto it, creates a nice little buffer. You can also use a pool noodle that can be done. If your feet are not on the floor because you've adjusted your chair to make sure that everything else is in good postures, you can certainly purchase a footrest, but you don't need to. You can go out and again get a box or a block of wood that could raise your feet up so that your thighs are parallel to the floor, and your lower legs are perpendicular to the floor and well supported, so that your back of your legs, upper legs, are not getting pinched by the front edge of the chairs, particularly dining room chairs. You know, staying sane at home is certainly a key component, and the work-life balance, you know, may disrupt this, or may be disrupted by working at home. You know, stress, frustration, we showed that is increased for many individuals, which could lead to burnout. This was really certainly during the COVID pandemic. The school sending kids home virtually made it much more difficult for parents working at home. That world balance of family work was difficult at times. But what you really got to do is set routines and boundaries. It's an opportune time. Somebody rings the bell. I apologize. Sorry about that.
Kermit, I know that wasn't planned, but it's a perfect example of what working from home has been like for most people.
Oh my God, I apologize. Somebody came to my door and obviously made crazy. All right, so yeah, you need to establish routines and set boundaries between work and personal time. And this is one of the problems with working at home. You have other interruptions that go on that you cannot prepare for. Certainly, this is a key issue. But having set boundaries between the work, even if I'm at home by myself, certainly things certainly come up that you cannot even imagine happen. You want to share your work schedule with the family and work to make sure that those expectations are set, because it gets really blurry when you're working from home. So this is one of the key aspects. One of the other things is you got to make sure that you have social connection that is critical when you're working at home. Routine interactions and informal chats that you have when you're walking around at the office, around the cooler, and that you don't have when you're isolated at home. So you need a combination of in-person phone calls and web conferences to combat the web conference burnout that you might have. I think I'm a big believer you need to make sure that you have less than 4 hours per day with breaks between each of the hours, that you need to leave your workstation again for 5 minutes to rejuvenate, get your concentration off of the actual web conferences that you're involved in. And I can tell you myself personally, I have this constant having constant conferences on some of the days where I can go back to back to back to back and not even get out of my chair for 3 or 4 hours, which is really difficult. So now I'm starting to schedule a 10-minute buffer between each of my conference calls. So my take-home message, traditional desks are best, obviously, but most of them were not sent home with any type of office desk. They were sent home with a laptop, which needs to have some external monitors, keyboards, and mouse. Should be added to that and get the ability to put you in proper ergonomic postures, so you're not looking down, you're not having surfaces that you're leaning towards and everything that you're leaning on the front edge of that. Makeshift desks oftentimes results in poor ergonomics and elevate discomfort. And those makeshift desks oftentimes result from dining room tables and other type of surfaces that are hard, as well as don't have proper office chairs. And then really the key, I think, is company and institutions need to provide proper ergonomic training that they would do in the office. We can't just send people home without proper office equipment, because the company is going to be liable for people getting injured in the workplace. In the workplace now, it could be at home, for many people. I would like to have a special thanks for the sponsors, which is the National Institute of Occupational Safety Health through our Education Research Center, and a intergovernmental personal agreement that I'm currently having, that I'm doing a lot of this office virtual stuff to distribute out in the workplace, and reaching out and outreach. I do want to say that there is a special issue that I'm working on that's going to go in a lot more depth of virtual offices. There should be about 15 to 20 articles that's going to be looking into or are going to be reported on various aspects of virtual offices that should be coming out and be finishing up in the fall here. So look out for that. And now I can take any questions. And I deeply apologize for my dogs that went nuts with a person that I didn't even know was showing up to my front door.
Kermit, thank you. That was great. And I know it wasn't staged to have the dog barking, but it was a perfect example of what we've all been experiencing working from home. And so no problem. Now, we've got a question from Nari, and a shout out to Nari, who is a doctoral student in the Boston University Post-Professional Occupational Therapy Program. And Nari wrote, thank you for your wonderful presentation. Dr. Davis, I am wondering, I sometimes don't know specific optimal position for the monitor, if it's too close or while using a computer. Could you explain more about the optimal distance?
Well, I would certainly, one of the things that it, I always, optimal is always a thing that I believe you have to kind of, there's a range for optimal. One of the things I would refer to anybody on any of this, there's a great checklist that OSHA has on their website. It's a checklist for offices setups, and it goes through the positioning of that distance. A lot of that distance is going to depend on your monitor size, your focal points, and just as well as what other activities that you're dealing with on your workstation. Many times, with the workstation, computer workstation is not all about just typing on a keyboard, and oftentimes you have papers, you have books, you have other things, particularly with students and faculty and workers. So I think the optimal ranges are usually 12 to 18, I believe, if my memory's there. I think it's just as important to have the height of it. I think that's more important, having the correct height than having the distance as much. But certainly, a lot of cases the distances are limited, other than like on a kitchen table. The distances are oftentimes limited to your desk size. And so there's not a lot that you can do oftentimes with the distance between the screen and yourself. So I kind of indirectly answered that probably, but I kind of look, I always look at distances and everything, more looking at what type of postures you're getting people in when you're working. Are you, because it's not just the distance of the monitor from your eyes, but also all the other things that you're doing involved in the office. So I think it's a balance between all of them, I guess, is really what I would say. Versus is there an optimal?
Yeah, thank you, Kermit. Sometimes what I'll do when I'm working with someone, particularly remotely, is, I'll tell them to make a closed fist and then put their arm out towards the monitor. And that's sort of, because a lot of times people don't have anything to measure. So I sort of have that sort of distance as, just something to anchor yourself with.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of those little things there. But again, a lot of times with the monitor, distance wise, it's just, it all depends on your desk size and
absolutely.
So yeah.
And people just have to be very creative. And I love what you shared. I pivoted very quickly from my office that I think is set up really beautifully at Boston University to working at home. I use my yoga blocks for a footrest. And I have to say, I'm not going to go back to my footrest in my office. I'm going to take those yoga blocks with me. I'm much more comfortable. So creative has been great.
There's a lot of ways that you can do a lot of ergonomics on it doesn't have to be expensive. You don't have to go spend, even most of the chairs, you can adapt them pretty easily with various towels and pillows and other type of things. If you don't have armrests, though, I'm a big advocate of armrests. I think I've seen gone in too many offices where people don't have armrests and they're basically supporting their arms resting, either on the front edge of the desk, or they end up, oftentimes keeping their arms raised, and then they wonder why their upper back is killing them.
Yeah, so you're really stressing how important that is.
Yeah.
So Kermit, future, you talked about that we're probably going to see a percentage of maybe, I think you said 40 to 50% of people perhaps continuing to work from home. So are there concerns that you have? What are you thinking about being the next project to look into regarding people continuing to work from home?
Yeah, I think, one of the, I guess there's two major ones, I think. We've started getting the sort of scratch the surface and looking into the impact of conference calls on workers, because I think that is one that we with even many of the people that work at home, I think with some people working at home, some people not, you're seeing a lot more conference calls, and where you're seeing longer conference calls and as well as just back-to-back ones. And I think the detriment of those on workers, on fatigue-wise and stress, and is that we're just starting to get the scratch the surface of that. So we're starting to look into that. I think some of the other aspects is the psychosocial aspects. Can should we be going maybe not totally virtual, but maybe a hybrid where you at least one day a week you come in and get some human interaction with teamwork and those type of things. I think that could also be one that I see in the future that we're trying to. And then I think the other one is really just hard to say. Sorry to say is still. I think we've identified that a lot of home offices are not set up even semi-optimal, that we really need to really approach training and assessment to get these people in good working positions, neutral postures, and make sure that they're taking proper breaks and looking at and then the final another one would probably be looking at it a little more in depth in the family work balance, because I do think there are a lot of positives that we can identify with the family work balance that could be beneficial, and some that could be detrimental on the family work dynamic.
Yeah, thank you so very much. All of that was really helpful and so important. So futuristically, you see, a growing area with working from home and the need for ergonomics being applied to the home environment. And that special issue of work from home, I think, is going to be very important. Can you foreshadow anything at all regarding that issue for us?
I can foreshadow a few of my studies out there. I'm trying to think. We have one case study that's going to be sort of a company that's been using virtual office or virtual work for more than a decade, almost 2 decades, I think. Talking about the benefits they've seen over the years. We have a study that we have a follow-up for the fall that we've looked at. Sort of follow-up, which the discouraging fact there is the results are pretty similar to what we saw in the spring. So even a year into the pandemic, people are still using the same type of only slightly better in some areas, but majority was identical almost. We have a study with, we also looked at students, and we also have a study that we looked at teachers in February of this year, looking at how teachers were impacted by COVID-19 and the virtual office, and how many of them had to teach from home, and the big shift from not using any type of video conferencing to actually using it all the time, because some people had to be at home, and even in the places that they were working, or had school at where people were in school. So it was very different parameters that they were working under, and that was in the primary school level. There's other individuals that are looking at the sort of the physical therapy and healthcare aspects of the virtual arena, where you're doing online call or evaluations, medical evaluations, and that the impact of that on stress, and that there's another study on another faculty at a different university that's out there, and then a couple international papers looking at the impact of COVID-19 and virtually also. So if I would have known that question was coming, I would probably have been a little better prepared and give me a lot more detail, but
That's
great. As good as I can remember.
No, that was great, and I would have helped you as well with some of that. But good just overview. We want to keep people excited about that special issue coming out. Kermit, I just want to thank you so much for being here today, for spending your time with us. And now everybody, including you and me, can get up and stretch.
Yes, that's for sure. That's what I would say. If you don't remember anything out of my whole talk, that is the number one. No matter how bad your situation is on your work, if you're just working off a laptop, every 30 minutes, get up, move around, take a break, take a bio break, just move around, stand up, type a little bit, sit back down, but move around. That's the biggest thing. That can help a lot of your problems. So.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And everyone, thank you for being here for this Learn at Work webinar. And Kermit, thank you for all that you do to advance the knowledge and skills related to ergonomics in general, and for your leadership in ergonomics. It's such a pleasure to have you present this webinar.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.